I'm sure many people identify with this, but it's very difficult being one of the people who's actually paying attention to what's happening while other people pretend it's just another day. Especially when other people are just blatantly ignoring the obvious. For example, when the administration completely ignored the Supreme Court in a unanimous decision and said they were not going to bring home the wrongly deported man, Kilmar Garcia. This was a slippery slope that now led to people worrying about him trying to get rid of U.S. citizens, which he then almost immediately admitted he was all in for, despite the fact that it is completely against the law. The U.S. government cannot forcibly remove citizens from the country for any reason. Yet many people didn't care about this guy because it didn't affect them personally. And now, it's going to affect them personally. Because they tested the waters with that guy and they found out that nobody's going to hold them accountable, and a lot of you out there just don't care. Even Time magazine is sounding the alarm over this. But I'm actually getting a little bit ahead of myself. Because if you'll remember a few months ago, a Republican in Minnesota introduced a bill to define TDS as a mental illness. TDS, which is actually described as just disagreeing with what that guy does. And hilariously enough, shortly afterwards, that same Republican who introduced that bill had to resign after he was caught soliciting a minor. But look at what the actual definition of this word means. Pretty simple, right? So let's look at what an example of that is. Because an example of that is not pointing out when a man who is openly, admittedly authoritarian is blatantly doing things that are against the law, like trying to send U.S. citizens to torture prisons, blatantly disregarding the Supreme Court, a co-equal branch of the government. That's an impeachable offense, like the dozens of others he's already done. It is not crazy or insane to speak out against such atrocities. Yet the people who follow him without question will just be like, nah, you must be nuts because this guy's the second coming of Jesus. Something that you guys seem to kind of obsess over. Even making golden idols of him that were ironically made in Mexico. This would be considered an unhealthy obsession. One might call it crazy. When the previous guy was in office, you obsessively kept plastering dumb things like this all over your house and all over your truck, as well as putting insane decals on the back of your truck showing the previous president tied up. And whenever anybody speaks out against this man, he just claims those people hate our country because they're criticizing him. Which is why so many people are sounding the alarm. Because speaking out against a crazed man who wants to illegally send his own citizens to another country to a torture prison for speaking out against him is not deranged. Going along with it is deranged. This is deranged. This is deranged. Because TDS more closely aligns with this. Speaking out against these atrocities and the blatant crimes of this administration is not derangement. Being head over heels in love with a man who continues to take away your rights and your money and does absolutely nothing to help you personally, while defending every single horrible thing he does and says, that is the definition of deranged. Forget the 1930s. This is like the 1630s. Because they want to claim that anyone who speaks out against the Mad King must be insane and be placed in prison.